Greetings from the Long Island Sound podcast. Welcome to the show. Please rate, review, and comment on the show. And call our listener line and leave a message for our guests. Dial 631-800-3579. All right, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Long Island Sound podcast, where we explore the muse and the music, from the North Shore to the South Shore, from New York City to the Hamptons, navigating the wellspring of original music from singer-songwriters and musicians from Long Island, New York. Hi, I'm Steve Yusko from GigDestiny.com. Stay tuned as we explore the Long Island Sound. I hope your expectations for this episode are high, because Andrew Weiss will not disappoint. He's been hailed as a singer-songwriter in the tradition of Laurel Canyon, producing a warm haze of chiming guitars and sweet harmonies. If somehow you crossed the artistry of Neil Young, added the voice of Lucas Nelson of Promise of the Real, you'd find the Americana rock style of Andrew's music. Let's get right into it. Have a listen to Tommy's Teardrops.
She said, "My mother won't like this.
few days ago, an email came across my screen introducing today's guests. And lo and behold, a couple days later, here we are ready to digest some new music and an artist with a career on the move up. Andrew Weiss' music is a welcome discovery, and I usually try to wax poetic on my own introductions, but this time I'm going to let the critics speak. Under the Radar in 2020 said, Weiss crafts beautifully tender confessions amidst warm lull of dreamy psych-folk. He invites the listener into a warm haze of chiming guitars and sweet harmonies. Americana Highways stated, Dreamy paradise, ruminations characterize Andrew Weiss' songwriting. He has a knack of blending paradise with the endgame. Glide magazine comments, sly and soulful folk. An early Neil Young, this is where he got me, meets Fleet Foxes and take on indie folk, and is one of 2020's most promising artists. Lastly, Andrew Weiss is practically a veteran of a sound he calls power pop-icana, melding hooks with that classic Americana. I want to say welcome to the Long Island Sound Podcast, Andrew Weiss.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was like a mouthful. But once I saw Neil Young, I'm like, okay, this guy's cool. Well, he could be a total jerk, but as long as he likes Neil Young, he's all right.
You gotta love Neil. You gotta love Neil.
Gotta love Neil. Neil's wacky, and
that's why I love him.
Yeah, he's probably the freest artist I think I ever grew up with, which is is great. We can do multi episodes if we do a Neil Young special.
That's true. Yeah, we shouldn't let the conversation go there because we're just going to keep talking about that.
I know, right? We'll go off on a tangent, but anyway, It's really great to have you. So this happened kind of quickly because I spoke to your public relations guy Frank last Thursday or something like that.
Yeah.
And thankfully, you fit right into the schedule for today, and I appreciate it. Appreciate your time. We just heard the song Tommy's Teardrops, which is a great song. I've been digesting your music all day long. I listen to the car when I do my day job, just so I get a taste of stuff. And I've got to be honest with you, I really love it. It's just really kind of upbeat.
Thanks, man.
Different. It's I like it. You know, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't say it. But tell me a little bit about how did that come about? How did that particular song come about?
Yeah, well, that song started with the title. Songs can come from anywhere, as many songwriters know. And that one, I don't know, Tommy's Teardrops, I can't remember how I came up with the title, but it lived in a note on my phone for many months. And when we found ourselves with so much time during the quarantine, I was just, exercising the muscle, writing every day. I ended up with like 93 songs by the end of 2020, which was great because it gave me so much material to choose from to record this record, Sunglass and Ash. But during that time, Tommy's Teardrops was a title that kind of stood out, and I knew I wanted to do something with it. And I finally had the time to give it a go. And I think I just kind of spent the whole day. It was one full day of writing. I had the character Tommy, the character Heather. It kind of became a semi-autobiographical song, I don't want to say it was a similar story to how my wife and I met each other, not necessarily, but there's echoes of some of the little stories that ended up in that song. But yeah, I was really happy with it. And at the end of the day, when I thought, okay, I think I have a song here, I called my wife into the little studio room I have and played her the song, and she stood up and started clapping at the end of it, which was like one of the first times that like that reaction was brought out of her in a with the song in such an early stage. Like it was just birthed into the world, and it got a standing ovation. So I was like, all right, I think I have something here.
I tell you, I'm married as well, over 30 years.
Yeah, nice.
And
congrats.
What kind of floats, as my wife would say, the best 10 years of her life. But but there's something special, because your spouse knows everything about you, and when they give you that validation, man, it's just like super special.
Oh yeah, that's more important than anything else.
Yeah. So I was reading up on you, and I was jealous because I was like, he wrote his first song at 7 years old. I'm like, son of a bitch. What is it? Are you like a prodigy? Like, where did give me some foundation as far as your musicality as a kid?
Yeah. Well, I kind of have a funny story about my first song. Okay. So I started playing drums when I was about 2.5 years old. My parents
Come on.
My parents bought me a drum set, bless them, and they let me play drums, and I kind of worshipped the Beatles at that age. Okay. My uncle played me Octopus's Garden when I was 2. I got totally hooked on the Beatles and just digested everything. I would sit in front of the TV, and there's home videos that exist where I'm just watching Ringo, and I literally learned how to play from watching Ringo.
Wow.
And my parents saw potential, I guess, so they got me drum lessons, like, actual drum lessons when I was 5. And, I stuck with it for many years, and I took drum lessons all the way through high school too. So it was a long time, but during those years, I eventually learned how to play guitar, piano. My dad played guitar, my uncle played guitar, my mom plays piano. So, there were a lot of musical things happening in the house all the time. And my parents have good taste in music. There's always Elton John or ELO or Def Leppard or the Cars, like all those cool bands like were around. So I was always exposed to good music. But around like 7 years old, that was when I started. My dad showed me a couple of chords on the guitar. And after the first 4 chords, he says, "Okay, you're on your own. You could figure it out. Let me know if you have any questions, but you can figure it out from here."
Okay.
So I figured, okay, like I'll try writing some stuff. And I didn't understand the concept of how songs become songs. I figured, I'm not even sure what I figured. I just thought that they just existed. So okay. I'm watching TV one day. I'm 7 years old, and Jimi Hendrix plays this song called Purple Haze, which of course everybody knows that song. But as a 7-year-old, I'd never heard Jimi Hendrix before. This song sounded really interesting to me. I'm like, oh, cool. So I called up my uncle the next day, and I said, "Hey, I think I wrote a song." And he said, "Oh, like, let me hear it. Sing it to me over the phone." And I start singing Purple Haze as if it were my own, because I didn't understand the concept.
Stealing already
at 7 years old. I know, caught red-handed. And then he goes, "I'm sorry, Andrew. Like, I hate to tell you this, but that's a Jimi Hendrix song." And then I understood. Oh, I understand. Somebody wrote this song. I need to write a song on my own. Which, and at that point, that was my inspiration. So that sparked me to start writing songs. And I did write many songs. I had a songwriting journal. I just write some stuff in when I was 7. I was in some bands in elementary school, middle school, high school, kept writing and just stuck with it.
What's amazing about this story, being a parent myself, is you have to have the most wonderful parents who decide to give a 2-year-old a drum set. I mean, my parents would be, you want to go bang on some, take the old pots and pans and go to the neighbor's house.
Sure.
Because, until you figure out what you want to do with your life.
Sure.
So what a blessing it is to be kind of surrounded by that. It's kind of cool. And it's
Absolutely.
Really cool as a 7-year-old. I'll give you my 7-year-old confusion story. My
Please.
Grandmother sold her house in Queens, and we're buying a house up in Massachusetts. And what went through my mind was, how did you find somebody in Massachusetts who's going to buy your house and you're going to buy their house? Like,
it was like, a swap?
That's what I thought.
Oh,
that's where my confusion. And
I see.
The other thing was, I thought when you see a trail of smoke from a plane, a jet plane.
Yeah.
I thought that was a skyscraper. Because there's a song in that, and you better give me credit if you write it. Okay?
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad.
The skyscraper, yeah. So,
yeah.
Anyway, so by the way,
cool.
I end up talking about myself a lot during the episode. So
that's cool. I'm talking about myself. You might as well talk about yourself.
Wow, that's great. What a fertile ground. So you grew up in Jericho, you said, or you were born in?
I did. I was born in Plainview, and then moved to Jericho right before I started elementary school.
Okay, so we were right down the road from each other. I lived off Hicksville Road.
Yeah.
Like near Plain Edge.
Absolutely.
And went to school in Bethpage. So it was everything on Long Island. If you don't know, people are listening in Australia. Everything's 20 minutes away.
Very
at 2 o'clock in the morning when there's no traffic.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Sad but true.
So what also caught my eye in learning about your background is being a multi-instrumentalist. You start out as a drummer. Man, great foundation. You get the timing down, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think I saw one of your videos, you're playing the drums too, right? I think.
Yes. Yeah. There are a couple of music videos to this day with Andrew Weiss and friends that I still will appear in music videos playing drums. But actually on the recordings, like on this particular record, a couple of my friends played drums on a few songs, but most of the record is me playing drums.
Okay. Yeah. So you get that foundation. And then when did you branch off into other instruments and in what order, I guess?
Yeah.
Well, you had the guitar, right?
Yeah, I think guitar was first. I found out my dad played guitar. I knew that growing up, and then all of a sudden one day, as you do when you're kids, you end up in all these closets in your house. You play hide and seek, and whenever I was in my dad's closet, I always saw this guitar in the corner of the closet. It was I found out later, of course, being a gear addict now. It's a 1976 Univox High Flyer.
Okay.
Which of course was made famous by Kurt Cobain. Johnny Ramone played something similar to that. But that was the guitar that I first learned how to play on. The action was super high because it hadn't been set up since, the 70s probably. But I learned how to play on it. And that was really the spark, just finding it and thought it looked cool. And of course, being a Beatle fan, it's like, if you play drums, you got to branch out, play guitar,
Sure.
So yeah, I think guitar was first. And then my parents got me piano lessons at one point. We always had a piano in the house because my mom played. She still does. And the teacher at one point, I think I had 2 rounds of piano lessons. The first time that we tried it, the teacher said, I don't know if this is right for him. She's talking to my mom. I don't know if this is right for him because he seems to want to play to make up his own songs rather than just doing it.
Follow the instruction.
Yeah, right. So my parents were like, okay, like if that's what it is, that's what it is. So then I just kind of taught myself how to play piano. I was lucky to be blessed with a good ear, so I was able to figure out chords and things, and my mom would answer questions that I had over the years. So I actually wrote a lot of songs on piano before I really knew technically how to play.
Right.
But it wasn't until college. I majored in music composition and theory at NYU. And part of the curriculum was that they made you take 4 semesters of piano lessons. So that was really what solidified my piano knowledge. It kind of explained everything that I was already doing, but it gave it a light as like, oh, this is why it works, or this is how it would work better. So those piano lessons were really, really influential in just musical growth in general. So
a couple interesting points. My friend Steve Martino went to school for music. He played with us in the church and stuff. He's just a phenomenal guy, drummer, right?
Cool.
And then he goes to school and he goes, yeah, I had to learn piano. I was like, what do you mean you had to learn piano? Because it's a percussion instrument, and we had to learn it. And that was, he's as good as on the drums as he is the keyboards, and it was great. The other thing I thought was kind of cool is because I played on lousy guitars because I'd always blame the guitar, but having high action on the guitar or having a difficult instrument to play can actually make you play better.
Of course.
You're forcing it down.
Absolutely. So, you read all these stories about, John Lennon and George Harrison would play till their fingers bleed. And yeah, that might have been the hours that they spent too, but it was probably just the action was just terrible, I
remember bringing a guitar into Sam Ash and the guy behind the counter was like, this is totally unplayable. I'm like,
I've been doing it for years.
I'm an idiot. Yeah, thank you very much.
Right. Exactly.
So what's kind of interesting about your story is you're like almost, it's like a storybook story. You're almost like groomed from the very beginning to say, I can do this. And I've asked that question of other singer-songwriters. What made you think, hey, I can do this? Or, this is going to be my life. Throw that your way.
That's a great question. I think it all boils back to the Beatles, really. I mean, they were my favorite. They still are my favorite. I was lucky to even meet Paul McCartney a couple years ago, which was incredible. It was a civilian to civilian interaction, not planned. We met each other on the street.
All right, let's do this. Hold that thought because I'm gonna leave a cliffhanger. Let's take a quick break.
Sure.
And when we get back, we're going to talk about Sir Paul McCartney, who is turning 80 this year.
That's right.
as soon as we come back. Stick with us, everybody. Hi, Steve Yusko from Gig Destiny here. Well, as you're probably listening to this podcast, you're probably thinking about that musician who would make a fantastic guest here on the Long Island Sound. Well, we'd like to hear their story. We'd like to hear their music. So have them reach out to us at gigdestiny.com and we'll explore their craft. Now, back to our podcast. Hey, everybody. We're back with Andrew Weiss, and he's got an unbelievable story. Tell me about this chance encounter, civilian to civilian.
Yeah, well, I met Paul McCartney a couple years ago, which was incredible, as you can imagine.
Were you stalking him, or was it?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. Basically, my jazz trio, I in addition to Andrew Weiss and Friends, I do play drums in a jazz trio. And we had a gig out in the Hamptons at a juice bar, believe it or not. It was this upscale restaurant kind of juice bar place. It was trendy. It was cool. So, we played our gig and we took a set break. And during the set break, Paul McCartney was on his way somewhere, and I noticed him on the street. He was just, walking by himself, and I said, "Excuse me, Paul." And he said, "Hey, how's it going?" And we just started talking, and it came up that we were musicians. We're on our set break. We were playing, and we had a nice chat for a couple of minutes. And I mentioned I was a fan. No pictures, no autographs. No one asked. It's not that kind of thing. We just, he's a person too. So we had a nice chat for a couple of minutes, and he had to meet someone for lunch, and we found out later that was his wife. And we were playing our last song. The place was kind of emptying out. They were changing over from lunch to dinner. We were finishing up our set, and Paul and his wife Nancy walked in, and they actually watched our last song, and they were dancing and clapping, and it was lovely. Yeah, it was fantastic. And,
wow, if you don't get high off of that for the rest of your life, I don't know what else.
Exactly. So I'm very lucky to have met him and to have had him heard me play, which is great. Yeah.
So the next time you talk to him, okay, because I'm sure this will happen again. Just tell him about the Long Island Sound podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he kind of lives on Long Island now in the Hamptons, so I can fit him in possibly.
There you go. He's Long Island by transplant.
Yeah, I don't want to break the genre, but for him, I might bend the rules a little bit.
There you go.
That is cool. I mean, and the fact that he actually stopped to talk to you and didn't have security wrestle you to the ground,
it was nothing but lovely. Yeah, he's a really, really genuine, nice guy. I have nothing but good things to say.
That's great. So we were talking during the break, you are a professional musician. I would put you in that category. This is what you do.
Absolutely.
Besides lessons and other things and gigs and to support yourself.
Sure.
Tell us about, I'd like to talk about some of your process. You did say, so I use this term a lot. I got it from Mike Nugent about woodshedding.
Yeah.
These people really, really do their craft.
Yeah.
And you had that opportunity, which is, I think, the silver lining and through this whole COVID mess of taking the time to just write and produce and get stuff out there. So, tell me a little bit about that, and tell me how the muse kind of hits you. I don't know if it's consistent, inconsistent, but I'm curious about your process.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, really, when I first started writing songs, you kind of just make up songs because that's what people do. Even non-songwriters, quote unquote. Babies make up songs. Anybody can make up a song. They hum a melody, they say random words, and you got something. It's not going to be a top 10 hit, but hey, it's a song. So that's kind of where I figure I started from. And you graduate and you start reading, becoming smarter and learning about life and having life experiences, and things happen to you and you decide, hey, maybe someone else would want to hear about this. Or maybe it's just because I want to write about it, just because that's the selfish reason for it, but you hope that other people will benefit from it. And you hope that it'll help them in some way. And that was kind of those were my early songs throughout high school and that time period. And then in college, I was lucky enough to go to NYU, where the teachers that I had were fantastic. And really that was formative because I did have one teacher there who really changed the way that I thought about songwriting. It wasn't necessarily that he changed my songs necessarily, but it was the way that I thought about songwriting. Things that helped me get the first draft better than they were before I started working with him. Because, songwriters go through processes. Sometimes you get it right on the first try. I've had those lucky experiences. And other times you write a first verse or you write a whole song and you throw it all away and you keep the idea, but you start over again. Mm-hmm. And he definitely helped me get a better first instinct draft. And I wouldn't have thought that you could change that about your songwriting, but you definitely can, or at least with me, it worked, whatever it was.
Do you want to say who that was?
Yeah, that was Billy Seidman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your professor at NYU. All
yes.
right, we'll put it.
Yes.
But I'll interrupt you real quick. So any of the people we mention and stuff like that, for our audience, if you want to get more information, just go to the chapter links and you'll see some wiki links for the different people we talk about and Andrew's website and where his music is posted and the videos and stuff like that. So as you're eyeballing your phone when you're not driving, you'll see some pictures changed and some links. So please go to that if you want some more information. Anyway, just a little plug there. So,
yeah, absolutely. So Billy was great. He really just changed the way that I thought about songs, and I can't say enough good things about those lessons.
So early on in your songwriting, you actually went out of the first person, because a lot of let's say this is a generalization, but like teenagers will be in that first person. Woe is me. I broke up. I'm in love. I'm not. I mean, me. It's a little operetta. But you went outside of the first person early on.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the early songs that I wrote, weirdly, were not love songs. They were more comments about society, comments about the world, my own worldviews, friends of mine, things like that. But, in addition to, of course, the normal teenage love songs, I mean, I'm guilty of writing those as well. But yeah, and then I met my wife in high school, and then things started to gear more towards that. I mean, my first album with Andrew Weiss and friends was called The Honeymoon Suite, and really they are a collection of love songs. It was right around the time we got engaged. So yeah, that's definitely the subject matter. But I think as far as the muse goes, I do find that certain seasons are more fruitful for me than others in certain years. I'm not really sure why. There are years where in the winter I just write a ton of songs, and in the summer I'm a little dry. Other years it's the other way around. I can't quite explain it, but I think it all comes back to just life experience. Sometimes in your life, the emotions that you experience make you want to write, and other times they don't. And COVID is a great example. I remember the first couple of weeks of quarantine, there was nothing that I wanted to write about. I didn't even think about it. I barely even played. It was just very depressing, as everybody, I'm sure, went through.
Yep.
Yeah, everything shut down. People were dying. It was terrible. There was nothing good on the news. It was a really crazy time for the world, and then it wasn't until we were running out of food where I guess on our part of Long Island, the numbers were really, really high, and they were warning you, don't even go to the supermarket. You need to order online. So okay, there was nothing to protect us yet. So we tried to order online. There was no times there. You couldn't get a delivery, and it was getting really dire. And that was the moment where the muse found me, and I wrote this song on the new album called "This Was a Wonderful Place." Mm-hmm. And it's really about, as society, I think. It was a really dark look on society at a pretty low moment during quarantine, but I think that song really opened up the floodgates, and the songs just kept coming. And I made a conscious decision: let me just write something once a day, whether that's a whole new song, whether that's a riff idea, whether that's a couple of lyrics. Mm-hmm. I need to exercise the muscle, and it definitely helped, because maybe for every 5 songs, you'd get two songs that you don't end up keeping, but you get 3 good ones in a row, right? And that pattern keeps repeating. And I really do think that there's something to, if you stay in shape, you're just ready for anything.
Well, it's really, really cool. And I'll tell you, as a music lover,
yeah,
what I appreciate
and I've just, so I'm doing this podcast since January, and I'm meeting really great people like yourself, some what I call the wellspring of talent, or the Long Island Sound, and there really is. What really kind of gets me in a great way is the independent artists, the indie artists who will speak to social justice issues unafraid. I'll say unafraid.
Sure.
Meaning they're not a high celebrity that might be offended about, might be worried about offending their audience, that sort of thing.
Sure.
I was just thinking about, just now, it just popped into my mind, Johnny Cash when he sang in Folsom Prison.
Oh yeah.
And the one scene in the movie, at least, of hey, your bass isn't going to like that. And he goes, well, you basically tell him, well, tough shit on that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Which is a great attitude, and what you guys give us is the ability to articulate. Yeah, that word. You say it for me.
Articulate.
Yeah, that very well. Some of the thoughts we have, but we don't express it well.
Sure.
And I think a song can pull that out and go, you hear that song?
Sure.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say we got to get together, and this is what we're all kind of going through, and it's a gift.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for that. I mean, for this album, Sunglass and Ash, that's coming out this Friday.
And this Friday. So the episode will be out after this. So the album will already be out.
Fantastic.
So,
but what I was going to say was that this album, I was thinking about it recently, that every song on the album is a first person song. So meaning that these are songs that I've experienced firsthand, or know friends or family who've experienced these feelings firsthand. But every single song is about an event or a feeling, or something that's just very close to home. And I think that being the case, I hope that people find the subject matter relatable, because this was written and recorded during quarantine. So all of the feelings that I was having, I'm sure I was not alone in having. So I hope that it reaches people in a way that makes them feel like they were not alone.
Cool. Hey, let's talk about the second song we're going to hear, A Beginner's Guide to Being Famous.
Sure.
I thought this was a pretty cool song. So let's just talk about that a little bit, and then we'll let our listeners get a gander of it.
Yeah, we'd love to. This song was actually written really early on. I think I'd actually started this before quarantine, before we even knew about COVID, and finished it during. So, this was one of those songs that took a couple of edits to get to the finished point.
By the way, I'm glad you say that, because I can't tell you how many hours. Yeah, I did it in like 30 minutes. I woke up from a dream and wrote the whole thing out and it was ready. I'm like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm lucky to
It happens.
I'm lucky to say that has happened to me, a few times as well. But this is, I'm a believer in letting the song live with you and seeing how it holds up in a couple of weeks or a couple of days. And
I see.
Yeah. So anyway, this song, A Beginner's Guide to Being Famous, actually came out of my teaching experiences. Usually what happens when I'm seeing a new student for the first time, we'll get to know each other. We'll talk about music. And one of the things that I ask them just to make conversation is, what do you want to be when you grow up? What kind of makes you happy? And a lot of times, around the time that I had the idea for the song, the common answer was usually, I want to be famous. And I'd say, oh, okay, that's really cool. I said, what would you want to be famous for? And they'd say, I don't know, like really anything, like as long as I'm famous. And that just kind of struck me as a little concerning, coming from 5 or 6 year olds that wanted to be famous seemingly for just the sake of being famous. And then it made me think about, well, maybe the news or society is just presenting fame in a way that makes it look irresistible.
Oh, reality TV shows.
Sure,
yeah.
of course.
I want to be a Kardashian,
Exactly. And, of course, you and I both know many aspects of fame are irresistible. There's money, there's
notoriety, adulation.
Sure, a certain freedom that comes with that. But, there's also the downsides of fame as well, which should be talked about. And if you are going to be famous, I think that it should be earned for doing something that, is worth being famous for.
Yeah, admirable, right?
Something admirable, not just for fame itself, really. So I kind of wrote the song from that lens.
All right, very good. So let's take a listen to A Beginner's Guide to being famous. We'll be right back after the song.
I refuse to believe that there's another way to go about this. If there's one thing I'm good for, can you tell me what it is? So I can go and get it. Maybe I'm too young, and maybe that's what I'll always be. No one is telling me that this isn't fun, so come on and get it, it's free. I wanna be famous, I want you to know me, I want you to shake my hand. It's all part of the plan. I wanna be famous, I want you to take your picture with me and never look at it again. It's all part of the plan. I'm famous to be. I refuse to believe that there's another way that you can see this. 'Cause if it's love that you want, you know that you can leave. You're not gonna get it when your life has just begun. Your has been at age 23. No one is telling you that this isn't fun, so come on and get it, it's free. I wanna be famous, I want you to know me, I want you to shake my hand. It's all part of the plan. I wanna be famous, I want you to take your picture with me and never look at it again. It's all part of the plan. I'm famous to be. I'm famous to be. I'm famous to be. I'm famous to be. Who are all the lonely people who can't wait to hear how I'm doing? But what they find when they mind their own business is something not worth losing. I wanna be famous, I want you to know me, I want you to shake my hand. It's all part of the plan. I wanna be famous, I want you to take your picture with me and never look at it again. It's all part of the plan. I'm famous to be.
Hey, we're back, everybody, with the great, I'm going to say the great Andrew Weiss, because I do like your music, and that's a
appreciate
great
that.
tune. What I'm curious about is, are you, for lack of a better term, are you a sole practitioner when it comes to writing songs, or do you do some collaboration with other lyricists, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm one of those musicians who does not like to say no to any opportunity. So whether that be a collaboration writing, whether that be to playing guitar in someone else's group, whether that be to producing someone else's record, I mean, I'm welcome to all the opportunities that present themselves. On this particular album, I did not collaborate with anyone. I mean, that's not to say that I wouldn't have if COVID had not been a thing.
Oh, right.
Quarantine. I mean, this was all written during that time, so it would have been pretty hard to collaborate. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I did start recording the next record, and those do have a couple of collaborative endeavors song-wise, but I'll leave it at that.
Now, do you use a particular studio? You've used several different studios. You have a home studio. How do you approach that?
So I'd say about 95% of Sunglass and Ash, this new record, was recorded actually in my home studio.
Oh, wow. Great.
Which is great. Yeah. Drums, guitars. Yeah, really. I mean, there were a couple of instances where like my keyboard player who I work with, like he laid down a couple of stuff at his home studio. I worked with, in addition to me playing the drums, there are two other drummers on this album. So they recorded at their home studios. Yeah, some backing vocals were recorded at other studios, but really most of it was done at my place beyond just a couple of pianos and things like that.
So what do you use to lay the tracks down? Do you use Pro Logic or what do you use?
A mix of Logic and Pro Tools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, but it's kind of fun to record at home without the clock ticking and the money being thrown into that abyss. You know, I mean, I'm lucky to have a great relationship with Sabella Studios, which is also in Long Island. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
Not familiar. I haven't been asked to sing on anybody's album ever.
Okay, cool. Well, Sabella Studios, they're a great studio. Yeah,
where are they?
They're out in Roslyn.
Okay.
Yeah, Jim Sabella, he's the owner. He's great. Love him, and the engineer who I work with there, Will Harris, awesome guy, great engineer, and he co-mixed this album with me and recorded a couple of vocals for me and piano and things like that. So it's always great to work there.
Nice. So I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but one of the guys, I'm listening to your music, I'm digesting it, and you have a very unique voice in a very good way. And you reminded me so much of Lucas Nelson of Promise of the Real.
Yeah, thanks.
And a big compliment. It's just you have that same tonal quality, very
cool.
Clear and nice. And then we found out that we were both at the same Neil Young concert where Promise of the Real played at Jones Beach, which was
absolutely.
Those guys, by the way, just as an offshoot, Neil is energetic. Neil's not a young guy anymore.
No.
But with those guys as his backup band, there was a different energy that I hadn't seen in decades, to be honest.
It was fantastic. It was fantastic. Yeah. And the thing that was interesting at that show is I remember he did a lot of his new album at the time. I don't remember which album it was. I can't remember even what year it was. Maybe it was 10 years ago at this point. I don't know.
Right.
But it was great. I mean, I loved every minute of it. And I felt bad because a lot of the audience was actually leaving, maybe halfway into the set because he wasn't playing Cinnamon Girl. He wasn't playing, only Level Break. It was kind of interesting. But then me and my wife, we had decent seats and we said, oh, well, let's just move down. Like people are leaving. So
sure.
We ended up on, pretty close to the front by the end of the show, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, their loss is our gain.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I do love going to concerts, and there were a couple that I'll give you two ends of the spectrum for me.
Yeah,
was when I was a younger man, Jackson Browne, Running on Empty album, right?
Sure,
great album,
absolutely.
Went to the concert, it was the album.
Yeah,
and I was just like, oh yeah. It was disappointing to it,
What, just because it sounded like the album? Like
it sounded like the album? Exactly like the album. Bing, 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 bing. There was no offshoots and stuff like that.
Sure. And
the other concert, which you talk about, people who walk out on concert, we saw Harry Connick Jr. And he's known for a certain genre, When Harry Met Sally, that, classical stuff.
Sure. And
he went in a way different direction.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I can't even explain what it was. He was like it was almost like he's experimenting with the crowd, and people were. And this is at Jones Beach. People were pissed. People were like, what? I paid $75 for this damn ticket, and I got to listen to this shit.
Oh my god, that's really funny. Wow, I would not expect him to do that.
Well, I bet he didn't do it again.
You're probably right. You're probably right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So that's great. So you're very open and you've worked with other people. So I would say you're a sole practitioner as far as your writing, meaning you don't work with a lyricist for your stuff, I would say.
No, I think the stuff that I write about is pretty personal most of the time, and it would feel weird. I mean, not that I wouldn't be open to it, like I said, but it would feel weird letting somebody in to that process. And if I did let somebody in, which again, like I'm more than happy to, it would have to be for a pretty good reason.
Right.
You know, I'd have to feel close to them, I think.
Yeah, understood. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I noticed on the Spotify, you list yourself and friends, which I would assume gives you a lot of freedom in that who gets intertwined into that friends group. Or I could be wrong. Is there a steady group? Man, this is my band, or how is it for you?
That's a great question. So when I did,
I think I'm up to 5 great questions. By the way,
I'm keeping
score. No, but you mean it, right?
I do mean it, but
okay.
I keep saying that, and I'm like, yeah, you're asking great questions. I mean that. When I started Andrew Weiss and Friends, and before it had a name, I was thinking, well, do I just go under Andrew Weiss? Do I have a band? Because I'd been in bands, and I wanted this to be a little different, where I was steering the ship a little bit more than I had in the past. So I landed on Andrew Weiss and Friends, but not as a cop out, because you do see like people play, Joe Schmo and Friends. A lot of times they list themselves like that, and it's a one-off event. They're not really that band. It's just kind of blah blah blah.
They're not really friends,
right? Or that. But really, like I took the and Friends to mean like, well, this can't just be anybody, like I don't want to have it be a cop out where I'm just playing with people just because, I would like them to be friends, or I would like them to really feel like they understand the music well enough to contribute parts, or just to have the level
flavor,
of
their flavor and spice.
To lend their own thing to it. Because like if I ask somebody to play on a song, or if I ask someone to play on a show with me, it's not just because I need a bass player and they're a bass player. It's, I really like the way you play bass, and I think you can add something to my music, and I think we can make something really cool together.
Right.
So the and Friends holds a little bit more weight than it would for the one-off shows where it's Joe Schmo and Friends. It's not the same thing.
Which means whoever I can get to play with me that weekend is going to be up on stage with me.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Right. So in this way, the Andrew Weiss Friends, it's more like how you have Paul McCartney and Wings, and Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It's more in the line of that lineage.
Now, also, I think you've also, besides the music that you've done some scores for some was television shows or movies. And tell me about that. How did that come around?
Yeah. Well, again, going back to NYU, they didn't really pigeonhole you into just writing classical music, or just writing music for video games, or just writing songs. They really did expose that program to anything. And after the first 2 years, you kind of found your niche, and you figure out, what you like, what you didn't like. And one of the things that I gravitated to, in addition to, arranging for strings, arranging for horns, and writing songs, of course, is my true love. But the one thing that I thought was really cool was music for advertising, where you do get these prompts, where they say, I need it to sound like this, I need it to sound like this, and you need to say this all in 30 seconds or 45 seconds. And you in those situations, you don't have 6 weeks to mull over how loud the bass is in the mix. It's like, you've got 6 hours, and this is when we need it by, and maybe you'll get the job and maybe you won't, but this is your experience. And I thought there was something really cool about that. And just being like, a home studio junkie, where I love just being in the studio and recording stuff for fun and making wacky sounds and constructing songs, really, is what I love. So yeah, that whole way of making music just really appealed to me too.
Right. And then I guess once you get into certain circles and get some credit then it kind of opens up a different world for you and another
Exactly.
and a financial stream. I mean, I'm sure the residuals aren't great, but there's something, you know, it's
Exactly.
nice.
Yeah. And, you know, it opened up some doors. Like I ended up doing music for a podcast during COVID, actually. That was one of the other main projects I was working on. In addition to this album, it was a children's podcast introducing them to how the government works and checks and balances. And, you know, it was a nice way of doing that. So I wrote the music for that. I did music for a short film during COVID. So there were a couple little projects that were not related to Andrew Weiss and Friends, just kind of nice, fun composition stuff.
Yeah, I came across the same thing when I was putting this podcast together. And luckily, Mike Nugent is a good friend of mine. I said, you know, I really like the introduction to this particular song. I said, you know, do I have your permission to use it as my intro and outro? And he said, yeah. And I screwed one thing up. I spoke too long and I slowed down the music track. And he's like, wow, you changed it. And then I re-recorded. I'm like, oh yeah, it's like, you know, it's like putting makeup on a 2-year-old baby. You don't do it.
Right.
It's just not right. You know?
Well, yeah, I guess there's it's one thing to use it. It's another thing to change it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm guilty and I fixed it.
That's
and,
okay.
You know, the old stuff isn't up there, but he was generous enough to say, yeah. And, you know, I put a credit on every episode to say, hey, this is Mike Nugent's stuff. And you never know where it's going to show up. What I would like to do, and thanks for sharing all that stuff.
Sure.
I think you brought up some great pointers. Let's talk about the last song that we're going to do, which is What We've Learned to Live With. Tell me a little bit about that, and then we'll let the audience hear that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So that song was actually one of the ones that, you know, how we were talking before about the songwriting process. Mm-hmm. This one was written in 15, 20 minutes tops. And it wasn't one of the ones where I wrote it and looked back and said, wow, that's great, I'm going to record it. This one, I wrote it and it sat there for a little while and I came back to it and I was like, I think I like this one. This is cool. It you know, you feel the passion in it and the spark, at least to me. You know, it was worth recording. But the subject matter, I had seen the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, yep, I'm familiar.
Yeah, it ended up being one of my favorite movies. You know, it's definitely like on my top 5 list. But it made me think about the concept of revisionist history, just as a way of making art like that. And it made me think about, well, when I was in school and I was younger, we didn't really learn about the true story of what happened with Christopher Columbus and when he came here.
Colonization and even with Tulsa. What happened at Tulsa is you know, was not spoken about, at least when I was in school. It was, they just left out details where, you know, look, if you don't want to mention it to a second grader, I understand that. But when you're in high school, you know, you wish that things wouldn't be so mature enough to get the full story. And, and the more we know about the flaws and everything else about our country, and we revel in the good aspects of it and be wary of it.
Exactly.
Yes, especially in this day and age, to be wary of.
100%. So what ended up happening was I wrote this song from a revisionist history standpoint of what if the pioneers where Columbus treated them terribly and stole their land, and, you know, much worse, of course. What if they fought back, and what if they changed history that way, where they prevented that from happening? How would history have progressed from there? It was just an interesting subject for a song, and of course the relevance of the quote, "What have we learned to live with?" is just kind of a metaphor for everything that we've learned to live with in the past 5-6 years, you know, of just crazy world,
where like gun violence is another one,
right?
You know?
Exactly.
And shame, shame on us when we will get into that. I wouldn't say complacency, but it's just it's
the way. Yeah, exactly. We're becoming numb to these terrible things that are happening in the world, and it's not healthy in my opinion. And there was a part of me that said, well, what if something changed, and what if it was good? And this revisionist history kind of was attractive to me for this subject matter. So I did write the song from that. And then, you know, of course I break the bubble in the bridge of the song. I say a man can dream, but life goes on when he opens his eyes. And then it's, what have we learned to live with? Just bringing it back home. Like, this is real life, and we gotta deal with it somehow, and we gotta make it work. And yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's take a listen to What I've Learned to Live With, and we'll be right back after the song. Stick with us.
They took back what was theirs, and freedom was declared. A man can dream, but life goes on when he opens his eyes. What if we learn to live with? 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 What if we learn to live with?
Hey, everybody, we're back with Andrew Weiss. Hey, Andrew, I really appreciate that song because, and I've said this before in the podcast, you singer-songwriters, particularly indie singer-songwriters, are you're not afraid to tackle social justice issues and bring things to light and make us think a little bit and point to a way that you talk about things that can be easily digest, or not digest, depending on a person's
Absolutely.
opinion. So tell us about, I want to really talk about the new album that you've got coming out and where you're going to be playing, that sort of thing. And so our vast audience can follow Andrew Weiss.
Absolutely. Thanks. Well, it's called Sunglass and Ash, and it comes out June 24th. So by the time of this airing, it'll be out. So go check it out anywhere digital music is streamed. And it is a double album, which is kind of a lot to digest in 2022. But there's something about it being a double album that is really cool to me because it makes you realize like there's been a lot of stuff going on in the world and I've got a lot to say about it. And this is, my manifesto, you know what I mean?
Well, it's true. Cause it's almost like a blink of an eye. It was 2 years, and man, it's hard to even think that, wow. Yeah. A lot of shit came down in 2 years.
Yes, it really did. Like I said, every song on this album is really a first person experience and I hope that it reaches people. And I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. Anyone who gives it a listen, please reach out and let me know your favorite song.
Oh yeah. Also you actually bookended something well for me. We do have a listener line. So anything on any of the artists you hear in any of our episodes, particularly about Andrew's new album, give a call to the listener line at 631-800-3579, 631-800-3579. You just, no one will pick up. You'll hear a short recording and leave your message. Let us know if we can share that. But sometimes that cone of silence, you can give your true feelings. And
I love that.
Really
That's
like
awesome.
to hear about what you're listening to, because it's not what we write or play, it's what you hear. That's important.
Absolutely.
So you played everywhere from Manhattan to the Hamptons. Where are you going to be this summer?
Yeah. So but by the time of this airing, I've already played an album release show. The album comes out on Friday, June 24th, and we're playing our release show June 25th, Saturday at Rockwood Music Hall, which will be great. And I figured it's a double album, and I decided to do 2 album release shows, one in Manhattan and one in Long Island. And the idea is that there's going to be no repeats in the set list, and every song on the album will be played throughout the 2 shows. So I'm really happy about that. And the second show is going to be in Long Island, so it's fitting that I advertise it here. It's going to be on July 30th, which is a Saturday.
Okay.
And it's going to be in Huntington at a venue called Industry.
Oh,
and for anyone who has not been there, it is the coolest venue in Long Island. It's a thrift store, bar, restaurant, just everybody's really cool there. And it's going to be a really fun night. So it's July 30th. It's a Saturday night, and we'd love to see anybody there.
Right. So you can find those events at Andrew's website, andrewweissmusic.com. So we've got that right. And you'll also see it on the gigdestiny.com site. We'll share it there as well. And you'll see it in the chapter marks. Hey, you know what? Andrew, it was really a pleasure to meet you and get to listen to your music. I really want to digest it more, because, doing it one day does not do you justice. So it'll be on my Spotify playlist as
Awesome.
I listen to you. And one of the things, learn from COVID, I end up my shows this way. We can account for what we have in our bank accounts, what we owned, and people around us. We can never account for the time we have left on this earth. So the fact that you gave me an hour of your time tonight, that you shared your art with me and your honest conversation and gave us some great hints and tricks and stuff about the industry, I really appreciate it, man.
Oh, man. Well, thanks for having me. It means a lot that you're one of the good guys who listens. So that is awesome. I appreciate that.
Cool. I'd love to have you back. I know you're going to be woodshedding it and producing a lot more music. So remember this old 60-year-old guy when you make it big and famous and, out there. And really love to have you back. All right.
Yeah, we'd love to be back. Thanks so much.
All right. Be well. Peace, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Until next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace. Thanks so much for listening. Please rate, review, and comment on the show. We really love to hear from you. And call our listener line at 631-800-3579. Again, thanks so much. Be well.